We are back. Giants baseball, past, present, and future. I'm Ralph Tyko with the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network, and the host is Michael Duca. How are you, sir?
Couldn't be better, Ralph. We're recording
Good.
on the day after a couple of magnificent records in Giants history occurred.
Yeah, Joe Panik. I hope you're thinking about him.
Well, I'm thinking about him, and I'm thinking about something that happened 4 years ago yesterday also.
Okay. Refresh my memory.
Well, 4 years ago yesterday, Yusmeiro Petit came within one pitch of a perfect game.
Oh, yes.
And did so on a night when a total of 209 pitches were thrown by both pitchers, 2 complete games, no visits to the mound by either team. Now, that's what I would call a perfect game in any event.
That's a perfect game for a fan. How about that?
Now,
and an official score. Did you score that game?
I did.
Oh, wow.
And Petit remains the answer to a great trivia question. He is still the only person to ever win a Little League World Series and a Major League World Series.
Oh, very interesting. I didn't know that. I did know Joey J was the first Little Leaguer to play in the big leagues back in the day, but didn't know that about the
pitcher for the Braves and Reds.
Yes. That 58 Brave team, my Giants, my New York Giants, had moved to San Francisco, and I was in shock. And I remember rooting so hard for the 57 team in the World Series at age 10. It was almost a birthright that we had the World Series in New York every year in our hometown. And they played the Yankees, and in 58 they repeated and played the Yankees again. Joey J played a pretty big role in their bullpen in 58, and I rooted for them and pretty much was an apologist for them all those years after the Mets were born, and I switched my allegiance. But I digress. May I ask you about Joey Panik? How does he compare to some of the other really super second basemen of recent Giant history? Talking Jeff Kent, talking Bobbie Thompson. What about him do you like, and how does, like I say, is he as good as the others defensively?
I think he's better than Jeff Kent defensively.
Yeah, I was
I think although Jeff Kent surprised me when he got here, when Brian Saban traded for Jeff Kent, my first question was, there isn't a position for him to play on the baseball diamond. Don't they realize this isn't an American League team? And Kent surprised me with his work ethic, and he surprised me with how hard he put in time in order to improve himself as a second baseman. His ability to make the turn and his strong arm turned him into a pretty darn good fielder, actually. But of the three, I think Bobbie Thompson was probably the best defender. I think Panik is very, very close behind him, and if he gets to work with Brandon Crawford for a couple more years, I think he will be Thompson's equal, if not better. And he reminds me a lot of Bobbie Thompson at the plate, too. Robbie wound up being a guy who could hit 15 to 18 home runs a year for you. Panik has a shot at setting yet another Giants franchise record. If he manages to remain homerless at AT&T Park for the last half dozen or dozen games that they have there, he will have the record for the most home runs hit in a season by a Giants player with none at home.
Whoa, that is interesting. Wonder why that is in his case. Is it just the power alleys? Don't
Lefty.
Lefty. Okay, yeah.
Lefty, who is a definite line drive ground ball hitter. He has not succumbed to the lift and separate mania that is throughout baseball right now and that is driving what will become an all-time record home run year.
Right, and what will become an all-time record for lack of strategy, getting the runner over, bunting, doing the things it takes to win. Just sitting back and waiting for that 3-run home run can be very boring in a baseball game.
Well,
a lot of strikeouts.
Somewhere, Earl Weaver is smoking a pack of cigarettes a day thinking about Dan Stanhouse and saying, nah, Ralph, you're wrong.
The great Earl Weaver line, I think it was Pat Kelly. Pat Kelly says to Earl, he says, I would like you to walk with the Lord. And Earl says, I'd like you to walk with the bases loaded.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. Earl had a pregame show where people would send in questions via postcard, and some of the answers were not suitable to go on the air. Let's just put it that way. He had a response to a little old lady in Towson, Maryland, as I recall, who was asking a question about the tomatoes that famously grew in the Baltimore bullpen. And that response is not fit even for podcasts.
No. No. Reminds me of that Schultz, the manager of the St. Louis Pilots, or Seattle Pilots, in Jim Bouton's book. I think it had something along those lines.
Let's go pound some Budweiser.
Yes. But yes, we've modified our ways even on podcasts. I know I have, in keeping with the times, if you will. So they've played better ball in the last month. They're playing very, very decent ball. And
hey, you want a shock?
Dodge,
you want to be shocked? Do you want to be shocked? In the second half of the season, in the second half of this season, they've outscored the Dodgers.
Really? Wow. That is shocking. Yeah, and the Dodgers have lost like 11 out of 12 games. So
if it weren't for Clayton Kershaw's 1-0 masterpiece on his return to the rotation, they'd be looking at 12 straight defeats. And the Diamondbacks have astonishingly cut a 21-game deficit in half in a week and a half.
Whoa, this could be one of the all-time chokeroos. That would be nice as an old Giant fan for the Dodgers. But I doesn't dream, because what with Kershaw's coming back, that bodes well for them, because you can't go down the stretch without pitching.
And with Kershaw and Darvish, they should not have long losing streaks.
That's true. That'll stop it right there. I want to ask you about Puig. Has he progressed? Has he gotten back on track to become a solid Major League ball player?
I think the Dodgers are very happy that they were unsuccessful in trying to dump him for the last 2 years.
Okay.
He has definitely matured as a ball player. It appears that he's beginning to mature as a person also. For a reference point, I always point back to Liban Hernandez, who showed up with the Marlins as a skinny kid, and by the time he got to San Francisco, he wasn't quite Bartolo Colon, but he was moving in on that territory. And it was
big guy.
And the issue was very simple. He had grown up amongst so much deprivation that when he got to a land where places were open until 4 in the morning and they served food and alcoholic beverages, he just indulged. He just, when he came to the Giants, there was a big deal made. The Giants opened up a Krispy Kreme stand in the ballpark. It was there for a couple of years, and they sent boxes of donuts down to the clubhouse on Sunday mornings, and Levon would take one box for himself.
One box. Beautifully said. Wow. Next year, any impending changes that you see coming that we hadn't talked about, either on the coaching staff, on the training staff, anything? You hinted that Larry Baer, who may be in somewhat of a disfavor with the minority owners or the ownership group. Is that you just briefly hinted on that once, and I put that in the back of my head. Have you heard anything more, or is there something?
I have not, but I did not. Just to be clear, I didn't hint that he may be in trouble with the owners. I hinted that the owners are not happy with a potential 100-loss season, and they're going to demand some changes as a result. And my suspicion is that the changes they're going to demand may involve baseball operations. And if Larry is unwilling to make those changes, then the changes may involve Larry. Larry's a very pragmatic guy, and as loyal as he is, I don't know that he's loyal enough to put himself on the line. And people might say, well, what has management done for us lately? Well, it's a question of letting Brian Sabean, letting Bobby Evans mature into the job of general manager, and Jeremy Shelley mature into the job of assistant general manager. And who knows how long that's going to go on, because you have to remember that there's a team down in Miami that's about to be owned by a group fronted by Derek Jeter. And Jeter and Sabean have a long positive relationship with each other. It would not surprise me one iota to see Jeter make a run at Sabes to general manage the Marlins.
Whoa. See, that's something I expected Sabes to be with the Giants for the rest of his life. I expected him to keep on moving up. I basically take over Bear's place eventually. So that, Sabean he came from the Yankee organization. He was a super scout.
In the Yankee organization, he was a scout that I believe he was the national cross-checker who approved Jeter's drafting.
Oh, wow. Oh, okay. That's a shock.
And he has,
folks.
And he has a Florida background. Remember, he coached in Tampa.
Did he coach at a college? You said that too. That I didn't know that. What college did he coach at?
Give me a second. I don't recall, and I'm going to look it up very quickly.
Okay, just in Tampa though.
Yes, I'm almost 100% certain in Tampa.
Okay.
Let's see.
Well,
you can go ahead and he served at Eckerd College in St. Petersburg in 1978. Served as assistant coach at St. Leo's College in Florida and at the University of Tampa, and then was promoted to head coach at Tampa in 1983.
Okay, gotcha. and from there to the Yankees. I guess he probably
Mm-hmm.
started out Summers, like White, the guy from Sac State. I can't think of his name right now either, but they coach, a lot of college coaches coach professionally in the minor league system during the spring break or whatever it is, summer break.
Thinking of Jim Barr?
I'm thinking of the guy from Sacramento, White.
Well, Jim Barr coached there for many years.
Sac State, Weissman.
Yep.
Weissman. Yeah. And he's in the Colorado organization now.
Okay.
Okay. So, what do you want to talk about? I've kind of
Well,
this
you asked about changes.
What do you want to get off? Podcasting is great because it's cathartic, and you can say things that you might have been holding back on, things that you want to get straight. And whose reputation do you want to clear up? Whose reputation do you want to clarify?
Well, first of all, I have to make certain that my own stays intact. And remember, I'm an employee of the Office of the Commissioner, so my opinions, while strictly my own, also I am reflective of and officially a representative of Major League Baseball whenever I speak publicly about
let's
baseball.
Go back to baseball history and
there we go.
Talk about things in giant baseball history that were...
Well, allow me, if you will, to finish answering your earlier question. You asked about what changes I expect to see next year. I think that the next 4 weeks are very, very important to the career of Matt Moore. I think that if he is able to put together a string of, let's say, 3 or 4 consecutive good games, that they will pick up his option at $9 million. I know for ordinary people this is going to sound ludicrous, but $9 million is not that much in the world of baseball salaries, and it's a worthwhile gamble for a guy with his upside potential. But I think the Giants are going to insist on seeing some things from him in the next month that they really haven't seen all year, and the number one thing on that list is consistency. He's a strike thrower. He's got outstanding stuff. He can, retire hitters. But his mind seems to just wander at times during games. He loses not just his release point, but almost his reason for standing out there on the mound. That has to improve. I think that they're going to have to make some critical decisions about third base and left field and center field.
Okay, allow me to dream. If Samardzija, Cueto, and Matt Moore develop that consistency, that where they just don't throw one start out there that makes them look like a little leaguer themselves, could that be the basis of a pretty darn good rotation to build around? And is there anyone coming up? Pardon me?
When you toss Madison Bumgarner into the front of that group of people, I think you're in pretty good shape. I don't think the Giants are going to be out looking for starting pitching in the offseason. Let's put it that way. Even if they jettison Matt Moore and Matt Cain, I think that they probably feel like they have enough resources in their own organization to go at least 4 deep and probably 5 deep. Chris Stratton has certainly shown that he can pitch at the major league level. And Tyler Beatty's not far away. He probably would have been penciled in as the 5th starter next year had he not lost so much time to injury this year.
Okay. When you mentioned going out and getting a third baseman, it's just not that you don't just pull those guys, power hitting third baseman, off a tree.
No, and I didn't say go out and get. I said they have to make some decisions about third base, and those decisions revolve around Sandoval or not Sandoval, Arroyo or not Arroyo. And if not Arroyo, then do they use him to go out and acquire some other pieces that they're going to need.
Right. Speaking of records broken, as we were, Sandoval broke a record for ineptness, or was about to tie a record. 0 for 38, some crazy.
0 for 38 is a franchise record, and I believe the all-time record is 0 for 46, and it was set by somebody back in the era when baseballs were squishy.
Wow. Yes. Squishy no more, that's for sure. And
yeah.
That's another thing. The balls, there's a rumor that the balls are tighter, that the seams are tighter, that's what's causing blisters on pitchers, and that also could be contributing to the massive amount of home runs that have been hit this year.
And rumor it is.
Rumor it is, and
so far nobody has gone out and proven it either way. And I'm certainly not going to be the one who stands here as an employee of the commissioner's office and says, "Oh hell yes, the balls are tighter this year." I will simply say this: there is sufficient anecdotal evidence regarding incidents of blisters widespread among pitchers this year to suggest that it's possible that the pitchers didn't all go out and over-moisturize and make their skin too soft in the off-season.
Okay, that describes it without really putting your reputation or your your word out there.
I will say this.
Way of putting it.
Yeah, I will say this, which is a little bit
You're a
more
wordsmith.
Thank you. There are very few people in the world who hold a baseball for a living. And when a significant number of them say the ball feels different this year, it could be mass hypnosis, it could be mass hysteria, it could be that the ball feels different this year.
Okay.
I'm going to put some credence behind professionals who, throw 20,000 pitches a year, including warm-ups and spring training and off-season, and who squeeze the ball a whole lot. I'm just going to put some credence into what they have to say and say it bears looking into.
Okay. That's very well said. Now I'm going to ask you another question, and this I want to phrase this carefully because you're an employee, and I'm going to ask you which of the two commissioners or the new commissioner has there been a change? Not necessarily for the better, for the worse. Are things different under Manfred than they were under Bud Selig?
Yes, unquestionably.
Okay.
Bud Selig was an owner. Bob Manfred was not. Bud Selig got his start in life selling used cars. Bob Manfred got his start in life as an attorney. A used car salesman, in order to be successful, is everybody's friend. An attorney, in order to be successful, is nobody's friend.
Okay.
As a result, Bud Selig's management style within owners' meetings was to seek consensus, to find areas where everybody agreed, and to, basically make sure that nobody steered the ocean liner into the Empire State Building. Bob Manfred is more forceful, and his personality is one that basically says, they hired me to run this sport, so I'm going to.
Okay. Has he come up under any ownership scrutiny or any ownership opposition Anybody he's not getting along with?
That I have no knowledge of one way or another, and I wouldn't want to speculate. There are no overt signs of that. Let's put it that way.
The Oakland folks can't be too pleased. What with I don't know if it was under Manfred, but they're taking away the compensation, or at least a part of it, from the luxury tax that they receive. But with that comes the announcement they're going to have a new ballpark too, so that all won't be necessary shortly. But yeah.
Well, that's the theory. That's the theory. The phase out of the luxury tax payments was, I think, known several years ago, and I'm pretty sure it's
that's not a Manfred thing as opposed to a ceiling.
I don't think it is.
Okay. Is all going well? Is all going smoothly in baseball? According to baseball, does baseball think that they've got a handle on it?
Well, baseball's had multiple competitors for national pastime status over the years. For a long time, everybody said that NASCAR was actually the most popular sport in America, but it's been on the decline for several years. Football under Pete Rozelle began an ascendancy that had it be talking about being the most popular sport outside of soccer in the world. It's on the decline. Its attendance numbers and its viewership numbers are on the decline. Baseball's attendance numbers, I don't know if they're going to be going up this year, but they've been at a sufficiently high level over the last half dozen years that if they remain flat, I don't think anybody's going to be terribly worried about it. Their viewership
and they have that terrific TV deal that's new and exciting for them.
Well, yeah, and see, that's where things get a little interesting, is that the NFL's viewership numbers are taken off of networks because they show 4 or 5 games a week on one or another variety of networks, which are measured by Nielsen. But MLB TV is not measured by Nielsen, and I don't even know if they know how many people watch MLB Network. It being a cable outlet, that's been an issue ever since television expanded its spectrum so much into the cable world. It's been an issue of knowing for sure how many people are actually watching. It's when you look at the postseason, not as many people watch postseason baseball as watch postseason football, but you have to realize that there's competition during postseason baseball. Basketball starting, hockey starting, football's in the middle, college football's in the middle, college basketball's starting. When you get around to Super Bowl weekend, there's so little going on that Sports Illustrated has to show off bathing suits.
Michael, when the Giants built their ballpark, they did it in a completely unique manner. They themselves financed it all, and they pretty much were set to change the way stadiums are built. Did that do that? For instance, will the Oakland Stadium be built along the same lines, where the owners will really come up with the money for the financing of the stadium itself, and the city won't use? No.
We're talking history here, so let's be accurate. The Giants came up with an old way of building a stadium because prior to World War II, all stadiums were built by their owners, and in fact, many of them bore their owners' names. See Bush Stadium, Briggs Stadium, et cetera, Wrigley Field, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You've got a lot of stadia in the early days of baseball were, in fact, financed entirely with private money. Whether the Giants have started a new trend or not, it doesn't appear that way. They certainly haven't had much of an influence on the way football stadiums are built. We've seen that just the city of Las Vegas has given the Raiders, everything except the 12 wins that they're going to need to get into the playoffs. So I don't know for sure, but I do think that the Oakland A's are going to have to build a stadium that way. If you look at San Diego, Petco was largely built with private money. Cities now are strapped. They're just, and that's a function of the fact that cities are older, and cities have finite limits on how much geography they occupy. And so when you filled up your city with buildings, you really don't have an increasing stream of revenue that you can look to and say, well, we can commit a couple of $100 million to how to put in the foundation for your stadium, and you guys build the second and third deck, okay? That's just not the way it's going to work. At least in California, it's not going to work that way. It hasn't for a long time now. And I don't know how much that's going to happen in other places. I think as long as you've got smaller cities on the grow, aspirational cities that can pledge future income streams towards something like a baseball or football complex, I think you're going to see teams at least holding up the threat of moving in order to extract some public participation in other areas. It just isn't going to work in California because the money's not there. But there's some interesting things going on. I mean, the largest city in Ohio doesn't have a major league team. That's Columbus. The second largest city in Texas, which is the fastest growing state, has only a basketball team. That's San Antonio. San Antonio passed Dallas in size 6 or 7 years ago, but they don't have a baseball team or a football team. So, cities like that are going to be in the mix. They're going to be in the mix one way or another.
Do you think Oakland will ever get a football team again?
No.
Okay.
No. And it's most unfortunate. I know that there's a movement afoot to try and, if you will, exercise eminent domain over the name Raiders and keep it as Cleveland was able to keep the Browns for the future. But what's going to be built in Oakland, if anything gets built, is going to be a baseball-only stadium. So there's not going to be any place to move a football team to. Right. And while the Raiders had the opportunity to share Levi's Stadium while it was on the drawing boards, Al Davis said, I will never, ever, ever set foot in a 49er-owned facility, and therefore they walked away from the option that the league gave them on that, and the 49ers built that stadium without a second home locker room, and a second set of offices, which both would be necessary if you're going to have two teams in a complex.
Right, like the Jets and the Giants do, and it could be done very successfully. That was not a good move. That was not a good move for the Bay Area. Let's put it that way.
Well, you've got a very, very, very strong personality in Al Davis, who is known as a maverick and probably felt like he had to live up to that reputation, and who probably felt like he had demonstrated his acumen well enough that he deserved his own place. And it was a decision that we'll see how it worked out, because they now wind up leaving the fifth largest or fourth largest market in the country, and they go to one where the majority of people probably will not be able to, who actually live there and work there, will not be able to afford to attend football games there.
Okay. Another question I've been saving up for you. The Mets have a farm club on the West Coast. It is not literally on the West Coast, but in Las Vegas. And the Giants have a farm club in AAA farm club. Was it Norfolk, West Virginia?
No, the AAA club's in Sacramento.
Okay. Well, maybe I'm confusing, but
the AA club's in Richmond.
One a West Coast team. Maybe it's the A's have their AAA club back east. Maybe it's the
in
A's
Nashville.
In Nashville. Okay. And the Mets have. Why would two teams do that? There's at least 3 or 4 times I listen on the radio to every Met game. There's at least 3 or 4 guys are hurt, come up lame, last minute, call a guy up. He's got to come 3,000 miles. It takes a day to get him. And the same thing for the A's back there. I don't understand that kind of thinking. I mean, it's just beyond me. Can you explain that to me?
Yeah, it's purely circumstantial. It depends on when teams' working agreements come up for renewal. The A's were located in Sacramento, and the Giants were located in Fresno for many, many years. The Giants wanted to get a little bit closer, and you have to remember that the AAA franchises are not owned by the parent clubs. They are owned by independent investors who, when their affiliation contract is up, go out and seek the best deal that they can find. They're in business, after all. And the owners of the franchise in Sacramento said, as much as we've enjoyed working with the A's, the truth is that Sacramento is and always has been more Giants territory than it is A's territory, and we'd like to see the Giants here. Now, the A's had the option of going to Fresno, but they didn't act quickly enough, and they wound up losing Fresno to Houston, which probably also is not going to stay where they are for very long. So it would not surprise me to see the A's move from Nashville to Fresno when that contract is up in Nashville, assuming that those two deals expire at the same time. I know that Houston is certainly looking to move closer to their own area, and even Las Vegas or Albuquerque would be closer to Houston than Fresno is. But if they had their druthers, I'm sure they'd rather be someplace like New Orleans.
Okay. How close did either the Giants or A's ever come to going to Sacramento as a home team? I remember rumors both the Giants and the A's, when it came time to moving, really looked at Sacramento. What queered that for Sacramento? Because, again, they're pretty big. They're as big as San Antonio at this point.
Actually, I don't think they are, Ralph. Sacramento, I think right now, is a city of about 500,000, give or take, and a metro area of about 1.5 million. San Antonio, as a city, is about 1.2 million now. It's actually slightly larger than San Jose. But what really queers things in Sacramento, and probably always will, is the fact that Sacramento is a government town. Its primary industry is the government of the state of California. Those folks are not only not highly paid, there's really not very many corporate sponsors, certainly very few teams that have long-term corporate affiliations in Sacramento that can be turned to for things like naming rights. I mean, the arena there, they had to go to a local credit union for naming rights. You don't normally think of credit unions as spending that kind of money.
Right.
There's nobody to go to for, to sell 60 or 70 suites. And so that combination of things just makes it, I think, a very difficult sell to put a major league team there. You couple that with the fact that it can easily be 110 to 115 degrees In the summertime in Sacramento, while it does cool off some at night, I grew up there, so I know, it can be a little too warm for an outdoor stadium. An indoor stadium is too expensive, and I don't know that you can get the major leagues to agree to play outdoors in that kind of weather. They didn't let Houston, they let Houston have a retractable roof, and I think you probably have to see the same thing in Sacramento.
Right. It does. I spent 7 or 8 years of my life in Sacramento in the 70s, and I think it's beautiful at night. I think it's the most ideal. You go out to Renfree Field to watch baseball out there on a warm summer night in Sacramento. It's absolutely fantastic. I don't see it being a problem, but maybe those.
Well, you don't see it being a problem because the PCL doesn't play nearly as many day games as the major leagues do. The major league contract requires
playing a lot of day games. I think it's.
Next year you're going to see day games because you've got the new provision coming in that says that on getaway day, if a team has to cross a time zone, then it has to be a day game.
Oh, okay, gotcha. So
that you don't see things like the Giants playing a night game in Colorado. Today they have a day off, so it doesn't hurt them as much. But they've played night games even on the East Coast and had to fly home for a game the next day. And that's a distinct.
That's crazy. Yeah.
It's a distinct disadvantage. When you consider that, if you look at the basic agreement, you'll see that the Cubs are actually named in the basic agreement and have certain abilities to play games at game times that are otherwise not allowed. And if you look at the Red Sox are also named in the basic agreement for the Patriots Day game. The Patriots Day game starts at, I think, 11 o'clock or 11:30, the same day as the Boston Marathon. And they get special dispensation to start a game before 12.
Very interesting. Hey, Michael, we're running up against it. You're terrific. I enjoy chatting with you. I enjoy your knowledge, and it's becoming habitual. Thursdays with Michael.
Well, it's not Tuesdays with Maury, and it never will be, but it's the best I can do.
Beautiful. We're the poor man's Maury. How about that?
Very poor.
Not all that poor, Michael. Not all that poor. Thank you. Thank you, listening audience. We'll be back next week. Comfortably Zoned Radio Network, Giants Baseball. Michael Duca, the esteemed host. See you next week, my friend.
Thank you very much, Ralph. See you then.
All right. Adios, everybody.